You know what surprises most people in real emergencies? It is not how scary the situation is. It is how fast the survival advice they trusted their whole life falls apart the moment they actually try it. And today we are going to test some of the most trusted ones. Many survival myths are still around today because they come from familiar places, old advice passed down for years, movies that made certain actions look heroic, and tips that sound simple enough to trust without thinking twice. The truth is that you do not need to be a survival expert to stay safe. You just need to avoid the ideas that quietly make stressful moments harder than they need to be. So in this video, we are going to take a clear, calm look at 10 myths people still believe, why they seem convincing, and what actually works instead. And if you want more videos that make complicated topics easy to understand without panic or fear, consider subscribing before we continue. Survival myths exist for a simple reason. They feel intuitive in the moment. When something goes wrong, your brain reaches for the option that sounds familiar, the one you have heard 100 times, even if you have never seen it work in real life. The problem is not ignorance. It is that stress makes us rely on shortcuts, and some of those shortcuts are built on ideas that only look smart in movies or old stories. Imagine standing on a hiking trail as the weather suddenly changes. Your mind does not search for the perfect strategy. It grabs the advice you remember, even if that advice quietly pushes you in the wrong direction. That is why understanding these myths matters, not to criticize anyone, but to make those stressful moments easier, calmer, and safer. And that is exactly why it is worth looking at the most common ones. Myth 1. Follow flowing water to find safety. This sounds logical because water usually leads to roads or towns, and many movies show lost hikers following streams until they reach help. But in real life, water often pulls you into dense terrain, steep drops, or flood zones that are harder to escape from. Picture yourself trying to walk along a riverbank after heavy rain. The ground soft and unstable, the current loud enough to drown out your sense of direction. The better move is climbing slightly higher to regain a clear view, spotting landmarks, and moving toward open terrain where rescue teams can actually find you. And once you understand this, the next myth becomes even easier to see. Myth 2. Eat snow to stay hydrated. It feels intuitive because snow is just frozen water, and it is everywhere in winter emergencies. The problem is that your body burns precious energy and heat to melt it, pushing you toward hypothermia even when you think you are helping yourself. Imagine standing in freezing air, your clothes already damp, and your core temperature dropping while you hold a handful of snow to your lips. A safer approach is melting snow with body heat inside a container or using small controlled warmth, even a pocket warm pack, to turn it into liquid before drinking. And this leads to another myth people rarely question. Myth 3. If you see a fire, run upstairs to escape the smoke. It feels right because higher floors seem farther from danger, but smoke and heat rise faster than you can climb. Once the stairwell fills, escape becomes almost impossible. Picture waking up at night, opening your bedroom door, and seeing smoke moving upward like a slow wave. What actually helps is staying low, covering your mouth, and moving horizontally toward a direct exit, never upward unless absolutely forced. This brings us to a classic wilderness belief. Myth 4. You can suck venom from a snake bite. It seems logical because removing poison feels like the fastest way to help. But suction does not remove venom. It only damages tissue and wastes time. Imagine sitting on a dusty trail with a bite on your leg, panicking while someone presses their mouth to the wound, believing they are saving you. The correct response is immobilizing the limb, keeping the heart rate low, and moving calmly toward medical care because anti-venom, not suction, is what saves lives. And misunderstandings like this show up everywhere. Myth 5. Start a fire by rubbing sticks together. It is such a familiar image that many people assume it is a reliable technique, but it requires perfect wood, perfect dryness, and perfect form, things rarely available in real emergencies. Imagine standing in drizzle, hands numb, trying again and again while the light fades. The smarter choice is carrying a simple lighter, a small ferro rod, or even a spark wheel. Tiny tools that cost almost nothing but change everything. And the same pattern appears in navigation. Myth 6. Moss grows on the north side of trees, so you can navigate with it. This sounds scientific, almost like a natural compass, but moss grows wherever moisture is strongest and sunlight is weakest, which can be any side depending on the environment. Imagine walking through a dense forest, assuming every patch of moss points north, only to drift farther off course. A more reliable method is using the position of the sun, the shape of shadows, or even the compass on your phone if you have enough battery to spare. And speaking of water, there is another myth that still misleads many people. Myth 7. You can purify dirty water by filtering it through sand or charcoal alone. It feels reasonable because filtration looks like purification, but it does not remove bacteria or viruses that cause illness. Picture scooping water from a stream, watching it turn clear through your improvised filter, and drinking it thinking you are safe, only to get sick hours later. The safest approach is boiling the water or using simple purification tablets or drops, tools that weigh almost nothing and make a huge difference. Another myth appears when people meet wildlife. Myth 8. Make yourself look big to scare off every wild animal. This myth comes from fragments of truth because it works with some animals but not with others, and treating it as universal can put you in real danger. Imagine facing a scared black bear, raising your arms and shouting, not knowing that a different species or a different situation would require backing away slowly or staying silent. What works better is knowing basic regional wildlife behavior and using calm, steady movements instead of sudden displays. And one more idea creates confusion every storm season. Myth 9. Shelter under a tree during lightning. It feels safe because trees look solid and protective, but they attract lightning and channel it downward. Imagine crouching under a tall tree as thunder rolls in, unaware that it is the most exposed spot around you. A safer move is heading to lower ground, avoiding tall, isolated objects, and staying away from metal or open fields. And the final myth is one nearly everyone has heard. Myth 10. If your car gets stuck in water, wait for help inside. It sounds sensible because cars feel protective and stable, but rising water can trap the doors and electrics in seconds. Picture water climbing past your ankles while the doors refuse to open because of pressure. The action that saves time is acting quickly, unbuckling, rolling down the window while it still works, and exiting before the water rises. These myths all share the same pattern. They sound reasonable until the moment you actually need them. When you break down these 10 myths, you realize they all come from the same place. Not danger and not ignorance, but our instinct to choose the option that feels fast, familiar, and comforting when something goes wrong. In stressful moments, the brain does not search for the perfect solution. It searches for the first idea that reduces uncertainty, even if that idea has nothing to do with reality. That is why so many survival myths sound smart. They are shortcuts our mind uses to feel safer, not strategies that actually keep us safe. Imagine the power going out on a stormy night, the house suddenly quiet, your phone at 30%. Your first impulse is usually the easiest one. Grab a candle, open the window, check outside, even if none of those steps help you understand what is really happening. Emergencies expose a simple truth. The most reliable choices are the calm ones, the boring ones, the ones that do not look dramatic but give you a clear path forward. And once you see this pattern, it becomes much easier to understand how people get into trouble without ever meaning to. Picture a quiet evening after a long day, the house finally settled, the kind of moment where you let your shoulders drop and enjoy the silence. Then a sudden storm knocks the power out. The room goes dim, the air feels still, and Mark does what almost anyone would do without thinking. He reaches for the first candle he can find, something he remembers his parents doing during outages, and then he cracks open the back door because the air inside feels warm and heavy. It all makes sense in his mind. It feels familiar. It feels like the right move, the kind of instinct you follow because you have followed it your whole life. But the candle adds unnecessary risk near cluttered shelves, and the open door lets in damp, cold air that slowly drops the temperature of the house. Nothing dramatic happens, nothing dangerous, but the situation becomes more uncomfortable than it ever needed to be, and Mark can feel the stress rising without fully understanding why. None of this is his fault. Every step he took felt reasonable because the ideas behind those steps sounded right for years. A calmer approach would have been simpler, reaching for a small light source he keeps in the same drawer, keeping the door closed to maintain warmth, and giving himself a moment to breathe before acting. It is these small choices, the ones that start with awareness rather than instinct, that turn a minor disruption into something easy instead of something exhausting. When you look past the old survival stories, what truly makes a difference in everyday emergencies is not gear, strength, or complicated skills. It is a handful of simple things that keep stress from taking over when life suddenly shifts. You do not need a bunker or a wall of equipment. You only need a few items placed with intention so that a blackout, a storm, or an unexpected delay turns into an inconvenience instead of a crisis. A small power bank on a shelf turns the moment your phone drops to 5% into nothing more than a quiet pause. A couple of bottled waters in the kitchen keep a short disruption at the treatment plant from becoming a worry. A flashlight that always stays in the same drawer makes a late-night outage feel organized rather than confusing. These are not preparations for the worst-case scenario. They are tiny habits that steady your mind during the moments when uncertainty gets loud. And there is a principle behind all of it. You do not need to be ready for everything. You just need to be ready for the first few minutes, so your instincts have time to calm down, and your thinking can take over. That is what real preparedness looks like. Not fear, not pressure, but simple steps that make unexpected moments easier instead of overwhelming. When you look back at all these myths, you can see why they cause trouble. They feel logical in the moment. They sound like the right move, and that is exactly what makes them misleading. Understanding what actually works does not make you paranoid. It makes you steady, because clarity is what keeps small disruptions from becoming stressful situations. And clarity is what preparedness really gives you, a calm mind when everything around you feels uncertain. So before you go, let me ask you something personal, not about survival skills, but about your own daily life. The last time something small went wrong, maybe a blackout or a sudden change of plans, what is the one simple thing you wished you had within reach that would have made the moment easier? Your answer might help someone else think more clearly the next time life gets a little loud. And if you want more videos that explain practical preparedness without panic or fear, consider subscribing so we can keep building this together.